Good evening, everybody. Bishop Randy Dean here with you for tonight's Sunday Night Sanctuary. You can see from the title, it's pretty simple, straightforward, and the three words are, by this, love. So we're going to talk about love tonight, my favorite subject, my subject of passion and heart. But before we get there, I want to remind you of what we do here every Sunday Night Sanctuary. We do a couple of things as a pathway of security and understanding, and a pathway of a settled anchor of what it really is that I'm about. I'm here for people that I call spiritual refugees, folks who have run for the doors. They could read the word exit on the church doors, and they exited, and they've been exiting by the millions. We'll talk about more of that tonight in a moment. So that's why I'm here, Sunday Night Sanctuary. But I have found these same precious folks are still eager to hold on to the beauties of some of the simplicities of things like the Lord's Prayer. So I'll lead in the Lord's Prayer in just a moment. A lot of folks as well are eager and hungry for the Lord's table. So I'll serve the Lord's table here with no need for a church membership card, which nobody has anymore anyway. But if you'll have some crackers or bread at the ready, for in about 20 minutes, we're going to be here for communion as well. And if you'll have drink of your choice for communion, we'll receive communion in just about 20 minutes. So, as I promised, we'll say the Lord's Prayer. I pray with my eyes open. That keeps me happy. And I trust that it'll keep you focused on something. It's freaky for a lot of people. Every time I do this and every time I introduce it on some level, when I say pray with your eyes open, somebody always comes to me later and says, I did it. Almost like I dared him to jump off a cliff. It's a healthy practice. At least twice in the Gospels, Jesus lifted his eyes and prayed. So I want to be like Jesus. And I'm going to lead you in the Lord's Prayer. If you know it, fine. If you don't know it, just let me carry you along. You ready? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. So there you have it. That's the Lord's Prayer. It's a significant statement and a powerful and wonderful undergirding of holding us steady toward what is true and real. So I'm going to talk to you about love. Well, how do you talk about true and real? By this, love. Oh, it's come to this. We have to love. It's come down to this. Love is the ultimate reality. Love is the only credible value for what Jesus introduced. In fact, in John chapter 13, verse 35, Jesus told his disciples, by this, all people will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another. By this, love, by this singular value, principle, truth, practice, this discipling capacity to love one another, as in loving all people, to know that love is the root, the center, the ceiling, the floor, the walls. It's what contains who Jesus is, if he could be contained, and he can't. The book of Ephesians says that you would know the love of God that is beyond human understanding, the height, the depth, the breadth, the width, and all the love of God that is in Christ Jesus. So to know that love and then to follow what Jesus says, by this, How many people would know? All. All people will know. Now let's look at something pretty important. And I'm going to put up some links in the comments later that I hope will help you follow in what I'm trying to pass along to you. By this, love is what will captivate all people. However, of late, and I'm picking up from where I left off last week when I was with you here on Sunday Night Sanctuary. But now listen to some of these numbers. Every year for the past decade, 4,000 to 7,000 churches in the United States of America, 4,000 to 7,000 churches close and have closed every year for the past decade. And it continues, and the number is rising. And even on a conservative estimate of that, it's easy to say that at least one church, if not two, are closing every day in the United States of America. Why are they closing? Well, they're closing because, as Gallup poll has observed, and I'll put the link for this Gallup poll research, Americans have gone from, let me read this to you to make sure I'm accurate. Americans' membership in houses of worship has continued to decline, dropping below 50% for the first time in Gallup poll's 8-decade trend. In 2020, 47% of Americans said they belonged to a church. This has dropped below 50% for the first time ever. And I'm talking about church, synagogue, or mosque. It's down below 50%. To reflect on that, in 1999, so that's just about 25 years ago, in 1999, it was 70%. Since 1999 until now, 25 years later, it has dropped like a rock in the water. There's a reason for that, and I want to talk to you about that tonight. But I also want to reflect on this. 40 million people have quit church, Christian church, in the past 25 years. That's just a little part of the Gallup poll that I'll share the link with you about. However, here's the kicker. 75% of Americans still claim spirituality. A profound connection, heartfelt, hands wrapped around spirituality. And yet, the church is sinking like a rock. What's happening? By this, Jesus said, Jesus, as if to answer from 2,000 years ago, by this shall all people, that's 100%, all people will know you're my students, that I'm your teacher, that you have followed my teaching. By this will all people know that you have love for one another. So, to that end, I'm going to repeat a little bit here that I've talked about before. I'm a lifer as a leader in the church from the time I was in college and forward. I've labored in the church as a youth pastor, assistant pastor, senior pastor, associate pastor, you name it. I've been there, and I've been in the board meetings and in the leadership training and all of the minutia of how do we get people back in the pews, and the ideas that I remember doing one thing called I Found It. Does anybody remember I Found It? It was a campaign. We had bumper stickers. We got on telephones and we were calling people, have you found it? People say, well, found what? Now, now I realize looking back at that, what a sad and absurd little exercise. I was a leader in it. I followed it. I did it. But I Found It was seeking to bait and switch, BS people into making some kind of prayer on the telephone so we could brag about numbers later going forward. In spite of all of our efforts to stop the bleeding has continued, and in fact, it's a hemorrhaging toward real, a reality check that we've got to look squarely at what the founder of the church, Jesus Christ, said would include all people. And what was that? Love. Not telephone bank, not computer outreach, not mega churches, not the best ideas for children's church, all for taking good care of our kids. But it's not going to turn the corner of the reality that every day in America, at least 2 churches are closing because church membership has declined so rapidly that it'd be easy to predict the demise of Church Incorporated in America, in the United States of America. Now, there are some folks in the Church of America that love to blame culture. They love to blame politicians. They love to blame philosophers, Hollywood. They love to blame all the bad people that they've assumed are bad. Except the first thing they ought to look at is the mirror. Because Jesus said, by this, all people will know. By this. And what is this? Love. So rather than looking at love and making a pilgrimage and a marathon commitment and depth of heart to become lovers, we've chosen to go into culture wars, to battle Democrats, to battle Hollywood, to battle, you name it, rather than looking in the mirror and battle our souls, to recognize that we've grown loveless. And every day in America, 2 churches are closing because of, in the general sense, I can't speak for every church, but I can say in the general sense in the United States of America, lovelessness has taken over and all people are backing away. Now, another number I want to remind you about is that 75% of Americans still claim spirituality. Well, why is that? Because deep in the heart of every human being, there beats this sense that there's got to be something profoundly spiritual about my life, whatever that is. And so the last thing any church should do is to blame folks for running away to any other form of spirituality. Again, let's go back to the mirror. Let's look in the mirror. And in the mirror, if love is not in the mirror, well, then that's why people are running away from who we are. So to that end, it is my purpose here every Sunday night at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time to talk to you about spiritual refugees. The largest spiritual movement in America isn't in a church building. The largest spiritual movement in America, in the United States of America, isn't in a designated, incorporated, nonprofit sense. But the largest spiritual movement in America are those who call themselves spiritual refugees. These 40 million folks who have quit the brick and mortar of church, synagogues, or mosque. There's 40 million folks who have said, enough. Enough trying to prove we're right, they're wrong. Enough, and they've fled. But they still embrace spiritual values, a high level of commitment to spiritual values. And that's why I'm here. That's why my wife and I 5 years ago said, according to the parable in the Gospels that Jesus told, that if one sheep leaves the 99, the shepherd leaves the 99 and goes finds the one. And that shepherd puts the lamb on their shoulders and carries them tenderly. It is the notion that there's no need to have a brick and mortar of church if love is not the full circumference and the beauty of what's in there. We could talk about brick and mortar perhaps another time, but right here, right now, I'm talking to people, many of whom have fled, who've said love is not the dominant feature of what is happening in those walls and in those gatherings. You know, I've been so privileged to be a part of recovery groups. for a few decades, to be among a people who've said, listen, formal religion is not what we're looking for. We're looking for a higher power. And the higher power may take on a variety of expressions, but in the middle of that higher power, we're looking for love, acceptance, and forgiveness. And so within that pursuit for a higher power, recovery groups have discovered the beauty that I don't have to have a budget to protect. And in fact, AA absolutely refuses those ideas of budgeting and paying payrolls. The idea that love is the king, the queen, the royal court of how we are changing our life. Jesus already predicted that, right? By this, all will know you are my disciples if you have love. So all the efforts that are put into saving the denomination, saving the church movement. Somebody asked me, and in a very right mindset, they asked me about mega churches, large churches. They're all over the country. How do they exist in the face of this decline of church membership? Well, they exist under the notion that one size fits all, that we can offer you a stop and drop kind of spirituality so that you don't have to be vulnerable. You don't have to do any hard labor toward love. You can just come, check in, go to the giving kiosk, drop an offering, manage a few other necessities along the way, and come and go. It's a bit like fast food spirituality. I'm not at a battle with that. I've seen a few mega churches do a pretty good job, but here's the other part that troubles me about the large church setting. By the way, I think the mega church movement is it's on its way out, because as a church, the only way to have church is a place where I'm looking people in the eye, and I'm being loved, and I am loving, and my love is being proven as authentic and reliable. But that being said, I'm convinced that what is missing from whether it's mega church or small church, medium church, is the passionate pursuit to unpack, understand, go after a life of love as if our life depended on it, because it does. And in the United States of America, the numbers are shouting to us that love is going to have to be your final resolution. You can change your bylaws, you can change your website, you can move your furniture, you can have the best worship band, the best children's church, and all the other things, and not move the meter toward all people knowing that we are truly disciples of Christ, unless love dominates our thinking, our voices, our actions, our priorities, our values. And under the category of love, there are things like true forgiveness. Forgiveness, not just act by act, but a conditioned lifestyle of forgiveness. Under the umbrella of love, there's kindness, being kind at all times, in all places, with all people, in every way. Not just kind at the door of your building, but kind in the door of Quick Trip or other gas stations or grocery stores. Kindness is the most practical view of how to be a loving human being. And not only forgiveness and kindness, but how about empathy? Empathy for the LGBTQ community, the community that's out there looking in on the church. I got to tell you, I have met multiple folks who are willing to dare walking back in a church door if the rumor is out that raw, ragged, powerful love is present inside those places. And I've met many people in the LGBTQ community who have said, if there's love there, I'm willing to risk going in there, in spite of the fact that I might be painfully disappointed. But when love is there, kindness and forgiveness and empathy is present, folks are coming back. But not in droves, Not by some kind of big, some big statistical meter that will show us how successful our church is. Those efforts are doomed to fail. The only effort that will rise and shine is love. Love demonstrated by the King, Jesus Christ, who said, love one another as I have loved you, right to the death, to die for a friend. Greater love has no one than this, but that they lay down their life. And so he did. And so he did. And he leaves an example, laying down our life, laying down our reputation, hanging out with people who are not reputable Religion Incorporated folks, hanging out and loving people that don't have any way of rewarding Religion Incorporated, being genuinely connected with empathy and kindness and mercy and forgiveness. Let me tell you something. That's where it's at. And we're being left with no choices. By this, John 13:35. By this, all will know. All sounds a lot different than 40 million people quitting church in the past 25 years here in America. Pretty stark. I don't know what else it's going to take to get our attention, but there we are. So that's why I'm here, speaking to people who have fled the brick and mortar. They've run away from Religion Incorporated. They've run away from Church Incorporated. And yet they still are hungry. They're still thirsty for communion, the Lord's Prayer. Simple practices, but they're still eager for something this simple and beautiful. So, Lord Jesus Christ, this is your body that you gave to remind us that when we remember you, we have to remember that love is the royal commandment. It's the one commandment. It goes all the way back to the Old Covenant. Hear, O Israel, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. Here we are. We're back down to one commandment. One thing. By this, love. And love was demonstrated by the breaking of your body. And so we eat this bread to remember. Love is king. And you shed your blood. This is the cup of his blood. You shed your blood. You didn't bleed to create statistical success. You bled to love. Out of pouring your life, shedding your own blood, you commanded love alone is credible. The blood that was shed is the reminder, and you said, remember me when you take this cup and you eat this bread. Remember what? Remember Christ. Don't remember a beautiful building. Don't remember a beautiful ceremony. Don't remember a beautiful liturgy. Remember Christ. To that which brings us back to Christ is bringing us back to love. And so this cup we bless is the blood of Christ that calls us back to one thing. Love. Bless this cup. Thank you for being here again tonight for Sunday Night Sanctuary. I love the folks that come here every Sunday. I love the folks who drop in once in a while to just say, hey, what's happening here? Well, I'll tell you what's happening. Love. Love for everybody. Love for all. I'm not asking questions. I'm not looking for your membership card. I'm not looking to see if you've proven yourself worthy. I know you haven't, and I know I haven't. But here's what I know. Love wins every time with all people everywhere. So coming to the one commandment of love, which Jesus said is I have one commandment, and that is love. It fulfills all the rest. When we come back to love, well, now we're left with no other debates, right? So thanks for being here. No debate here. One command, love. Ginger's going to put up the contact information, how you can reach me, randydeanministries@gmail.com. She'll give you that connection so that if you have questions, give me a question, a comment. Let me know what you're thinking. How hard is it to love? I'll guarantee you it's very difficult. It's costly to love, but to love right is to love by laying down your life, even your reputation. So we'll put up contact information. We're baby stepping. I know I've been saying it for weeks, but we're still baby stepping toward the podcast. I'm not going to do it in a shoddy, poor way. We're going to do it the right way, which is taking time. And that requires a little bit of fundraising. So you'll see how you can help us raise some funds toward that end and to support what we're doing. I'm very, very excited about where we're going in 2024. The radio broadcast, No BS Bishop, Alive to Love. The way to get in touch with that is on the comments as well. I'm going to quit. Here's what I say almost every time I open my mouth to preach, and that is this. By this shall all know love. Let's not try to reinvent the wheel, shall we? If we are people of faith, spirituality, let's run toward one thing, love, and let everything else fall by the side. All right? I love you. Let's get out there and do something beautiful, something that looks a lot like love. And in the category of love, there's empathy, forgiveness, kindness, all that good stuff. Let's spread that out everywhere we go so that Jesus can have a people he can call, now those are my folks. They may not be big and famous, but they are my disciples indeed. I love you. Peace.